Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon to the young people and the young people at heart and those who fight for young people's rights. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, that of which very much so includes the exemplary young people representing their countries and generations in the audience. And happy International Human Rights Day. It is quite literally the perfect day to have this session. My name is Ani, and I'm joining you today on behalf of the Children and Youth Major Group to UNEP. It is with great joy and pride to moderate this official side event entitled Advancing the Human Right to a Clean, Healthy, and Sustainable Environment Through a Just Transition for Current and Future Generations. This event is organized by Slovenia, together with the Maldives, Costa Rica, Mexico, Morocco, the Child Rights International Network, the UN Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner, and the Children and Youth Major Group. Today's session will run in 3 parts. The first will be a spotlight dialogue with an intergenerational panel. The second followed by a thematic dialogue that is of the same format. And third and finally, an interactive question and answer. So please think about your questions from now. I would like to invite our Spotlight Dialogue speakers at this juncture to take your seats at the stage. We are graced by His Excellency Bojan Kumer, Slovenia's Minister for the Environment, Climate and Energy. Round of applause. Yes. Next, we have Dr. Marcos Orellana, UN Special Rapporteur on Toxics and Human Rights. Please take your seat. And the amazing Shirley, our environmental activist and climate advisor of the Child Rights International Network. Amazing. And very shortly, we will be joined by Her Excellency Inger Andersen, the Executive Director of UNEP. Please, panelists, welcome and take your seats, which you already have. I think I'll stay here for a little bit and let you guys have the spotlight. In this segment, we want to explore how the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment can be advanced through a just, equitable, and inclusive transition, especially for children and youth who are among the most impacted by environmental harm and climate change. I will invite each of our speakers to respond to one guiding question, and you have about 4 to 5 minutes to impart with us your wisdom. And this is your question. Drawing from your experience and work, what do you see as the key opportunities and challenges in advancing the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment through a just transition, particularly for children and youth? And what concrete steps, synergies, or collaborations are most needed to ensure progress for both current and future generations? I would first be honored to ask Your Excellency Bojan Kumer.
Maybe it's now working. Thank you. Hello to everyone, and thank you for the question. Let me begin by saying that Slovenia is really, truly pleased to host this event because topic is very important, not only for us, but I believe for many countries, many participants at this event, all the 3 days. And we host this with other countries, our partners, our friends, and thank you to all of you for your support and engagement. As we are also, let's say, very pleased to have UNEP Executive Director joining us, as well as the Special Rapporteur for Toxics and Human Rights later on. And about question, I think that I will start drawing from our experience. The recognition of the human right to clean, healthy, and sustainable environment offers both a powerful opportunity and at the same time also a profound responsibility. The opportunity, of course, lies in the fact that we now have a clear and also global mandate. Environmental protection is not only good policy, it is a human rights obligation. The challenge is, of course, is assuring that this rights is realized through a just transition that includes and benefits those who are most affected, and that is especially children and young people. Children and young people feel the impacts of environmental degradation, and yet their participation in decision-making processes often remains limited. And in Slovenia, this is very important to be very inclusive and also meaningful, that we include youth and the children into the process, into the decision-making process. And we are working also to meet this challenge through several actions. One is on a national level. Our ministry, so Ministry for the Environment, Climate and Energy, holds a regular exchange with the National Youth Council of Slovenia, ensuring that young people's perspectives inform environmental and climate policies. We also maintain a strong UN youth delegate and climate youth delegate program. And importantly, the ministry has already introduced a requirement in its public funding criteria for environmental NGO projects, encouraging initiatives that are designed not only for youth, but with youth. These examples, I think, illustrate the kind of synergies and also collaborations that are most needed, formal mechanisms for meaningful and inclusive participation. So if I wrap up my answer, you are very important for creation of our future, especially when we are talking about clean, fair, and also sustainable future. And not only that you are our future, you are our present. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And it is true, when we make formal mechanisms for youth inclusion, it makes sure that any table that is even dreamed of being made, we will always have a seat. And I would like to invite Dr. Marcos Orellana next.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Oni, and I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to be with you here today. Let me put the timer, please, so I don't go beyond the 4 minutes that have been allocated. Since time is tight, reflections on challenges and opportunities, I wish to confront the argument that the right to a healthy environment is a new right, and so we do not really know what it means. Well, it is not a new right, and we do know what it means. Let me unpack that. The right to a healthy environment finds its roots in the 1972 Stockholm UN Conference on the Human Environment. Since then, my colleague, Special Rapporteur Environment and Human Rights, has documented that most countries in the world have incorporated this right in their national constitutions. In the 1980s, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights was adopted, the San Salvador Protocol to the Inter-American Convention on Human Rights, all that at the regional level. In the 1990s, the mandate that has been conferred to me by the United Nations Human Rights Council was created by the then Commission on Human Rights, and for many years it has advocated for the right to a healthy environment. UNEP, our host, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, have organized workshops over the years that elaborate, that explore the content of this right. And so the fact that it is said that this is a new right is disingenuous. Now, having said that, there are novel aspects to it. And one of them is the fact that the General Assembly has, for the first time at the global level, recognized this right. Now, it has been pointed out, well, this is a political declaration. It doesn't mean that the right is legally binding at international law. Now, that variation of the argument has also been put to rest this year by the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, in its advisory opinion on climate change, where it reasoned and underscored that the right to a healthy environment is not only important for the realization of other human rights that are internationally protected, it is essential, and by necessary implication, it is recognized at international law. There was a lot of debate in those proceedings where this right is an element of customary international law. The court quite astutely avoided that and reasoned, well, as a matter of treaty law, for those parties to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, or International Covenant on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights, this right is binding at international law by implication. There's only a handful of countries, and literally a handful of member states of the United Nations that are not a party to either of these two conventions. And so it can be quite strongly affirmed at this moment that the right to a healthy environment is part and parcel of international human rights law and has legally binding effect. And as to content, there is decades of experience with this right. There is also decades of experience with the interface between human rights and the environment. And so the right to a healthy environment, on the one hand, can be seen as an umbrella right that brings together this acquired content, the cumulative knowledge of the international community at various levels, on the one hand, and on the other, the specificity of the right to a healthy environment, the procedural and substantive dimensions. So procedural dimension of participation, information, access to justice, these have been quite established. And we can also add the importance of the work of environmental defenders, the importance of the science policy interface, all of that in the procedural dimension. And in the substantive dimension, the obligation to confront risk and to exercise due diligence in doing so. So the adequacy of laws, the adequacy of institutions, the adequacy of monitoring, sanctions. There's so much that could be said in unpacking what due diligence requires. So this is to put to rest the notion that we don't know what it means. We do have content, and this right is legally binding today. It is not a new right. To conclude, the final observation on challenges ahead is on implementation and justiciability. There are some countries, and you know who you are, that are still anchored in Cold War mentality, considering that certain rights, human rights, are aspirational and non-justiciable. Now, this needs to be overcome in order for this right to serve as a tool to confront the triple planetary crisis. And in that regard, I want to celebrate the youth movement, children around the world that are taking cases to court and are succeeding in persuading courts to consider and hold that the right to a healthy environment is justiciable and needs to be given effect to uphold the rights of future generations, among other rights. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Marcos. And it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Inger Anderson. Your Excellency, if you would like to deliver your remarks for this session, we would be happy to hear it.
Yes, and I'm going to do the very good thing of walking in without hearing what everybody else has said and now speaking, and you will have to forgive me for this because we have some important negotiations and some important things happening here. But let me first thank Slovenia for convening this event and putting this topic on the agenda, the collective agenda. And let me also give a shout out to Costa Rica, Maldives, Mexico, Morocco for their leadership as a core group around the UNGA recognition of the right to clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. That was an important move. And to our friends from, to the rapporteur, to say that human rights and the Human Rights Commission continues to be an absolutely key partner to us, because we understand, whilst the human rights side of the story is handled on the Commission side, but we inform on environmental realities that can give cause for concern in the human rights setting, and very much building on an MOU that we signed in 2019. And to the Child Rights and International Network, and to the Children Major Group in UNEP. And if you don't know this group, they are awesome. I see Clive there, who's one of the co-chairs together with, I don't see Natalia here, but anyway, an absolutely amazing group of young people who are mobilized, bright, smart, and engaged. Now, when the United Nations gabbled this, which was gabbled the year before in the Human Rights Council, but when it gabbled this and recognized that human right to clean, healthy, and sustainable development in 2022, it really turbocharged a powerful global story. One that is beginning to, and I just came in on the end of your intervention, change the global narrative also as reflected in law. This idea goes, as far as we are concerned, right back, to the 1972 Stockholm Convention, which was the Stockholm Declaration, which was the declaration happened on 5th of June 1972, where UNEP was established. And that declaration speaks to, and I quote, a fundamental right that permits, quote, a life of dignity and well-being. And that is quite important. So we have sort of journeyed this over 53 years. And when we look at the UN resolution of 2022, it was the first universal recognition of this right, and it was as a result of years of advocacy, and I called out some of those countries that worked extremely hard on this. So as UNEP, one of the things that we do in our environmental law division is to track what's happening in this space. And we can say, and maybe somebody else has already said it, that 165 countries now recognize the right in either constitutions, in treaties, or in legislation. And we've just seen a few new countries come in: Australia, Canada, Cyprus, and the Federated State of Micronesia. So these are quite important additional countries that are coming in on this. And as you also heard, courts have taken up this many times by young people, but not always. And we've seen more than 100 cases in the last decade. In 2023, for example, in the Seychelles, the Court of Appeal called it, and I quote, the most fundamental right of a human being. This was in the context of the Woodings Holdings case. Some of you may be aware of that case. And we are seeing international courts and tribunals, International Criminal Court, the International the Tribunal for Law of the Sea, and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. They have issued some landmark opinions linking human rights, environment, and climate. And so this is a space that is moving. And within the multilateral processes, I celebrate Decision 15/4 of the Convention for Biological Diversity in the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework that references this. I celebrate the UAE Just Transition Work Program because it begins to speak to some of these issues around just transition. And I obviously celebrate the Bonn Declaration and therefore the Global Framework on Chemicals, which we gabbled, I want to say 2022, but now I'm in a time warp. And so the next chapter of this journey has to be about the international community to keep articulating and building out the content of that right to a healthy environment. There is no single universally agreed definition of what that is, but the right is widely understood by most. It's sort of like How do you define love? You know, we understand the right when it is taken away, but it is not internationally defined at this point. But surely, from an environmental point of view, from a scientific point of view, we would consider that it would include clean air, a safe and stable climate, safe water and adequate sanitation, healthy and sustainably produced food, non-toxic environment where we live and where we play and where we study, and healthy biodiversity and ecosystems. Surely they are part and parcel of that framing we would expect. So, and the procedural elements would need to be access to information. How will I know whether my air is clean or not, etc. So there has to be something, and some public participation in decision making. Surely that will be critical, and access to justice, courts, and effective remedies if my rights have been transgressed, and the ability to exercise those rights free from reprisals and retaliation. And the more clearly these elements are recognized in law and in practice, the more this right will be solidified and the more it can be realized for people and for our planet. And the easier it becomes, frankly, for countries to meet their international environmental and human rights obligations. So we have to talk about, therefore, how do we turn the just transition concept into the right to a healthy environment. And that is a transition that we have to talk about, because it is not just about workers' rights, which is often how it is perceived when I go into climate talks, right? Am I losing from this sector of work, in this industry, as we transition to another industry? We certainly have to ensure justice for those workers, don't get me wrong, but there is more to it than that. And so the environmental rule of law that we often speak about in UNEP offers a useful lens, because good laws, they align with the biodiversity and climate and pollution obligations, as well as with human rights obligations that countries have invoked. And so good implementation surely has to be about institutions, enforcement, effective participation, and those remedies that I mentioned. We from UNEP, we speak on the science and therefore the policies that the science of environmental issues leads us to recommend, often based on member states' request. And that is how much of the environmental laws that we support member states, always at their request, to develop, are developed. And they are often developed through what we refer to as the Montevideo Program. This is a decade-old environmental law program where we seek to translate some of these rights into national laws and policies, always at the request of the member states. Somehow people misunderstand. We do not have supranational powers that we can go in and tell countries what to do, so this should be self-evident, but I just want to say it. And when we are requested, how can we strengthen, what would it mean, often countries might ask, to strengthen our judiciary? Because judiciary and judges, it's a long process to become a Supreme Court judge, and they may not know the finer points about toxicology. So how is it that we can support the judicial sector by better understanding some of these newer elements, be it migratory species or be it atmospheric physics and how it might impact our climate, etc., or let alone chemicals. So, seeking to translate these rights at the request of member states into laws and policies, strengthen institutions, courts and oversight bodies at request, and always support the access to information, transparency. We are better off when we shine a light, because then we know what it is we are dealing with. So from our side at UNEP, we've journeyed this for 53 years. It is critical. In times it is being questioned, but nevertheless we've seen it march forward from 1972 until today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those remarks. The next person is Shirley, who will be delivering her remarks and shortly after be directing questions to all three of the panelists. Thank you, Shirley.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, fellow youth, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Shalia Kinyochieng. I'm 15 years old from Kisumu, Kenya. I'm a climate activist, environmentalist, the Miss Greening Kisumu County Ambassador, and I'm also a climate advisor at CREEN. It's an honor to be here today, not only as a young person, but as a voice for the millions of children out there whose future depends on decisions made in conference rooms like this one. In 2022, the United Nations declared that every human being has the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. For some people, this is just a line in a document. But for children like me, this is our future, this is our life, and our chance to grow up in safety and hope. Climate change and environmental degradation are not distant from us. In Kenya, it looks like classrooms are flooded after a storm, children walking long distances for water, families losing their homes, and young people losing opportunities before they even start. We, the children and youth, are living with the consequences of the decisions we never made. Yet, despite being the most affected, we are often the least heard. Today, I stand here to say that children are not too young to understand the crisis. We are often excluded from solving it. And I use my campaign, #ChildrenVoicesMatter, to try and show it. A just transition must also show how children and their rights can be included. A just transition is not only about reducing emissions, it is about ensuring the shift to a green society protects the rights of every child, including those who aren't born yet. It is about making sure that no human being or no young person is left behind as the world transforms. This means clean air we can breathe, clean water we can drink, and green jobs we can grow into, and also education for sustainable development that empowers every child to shape their own future. I come from Kisumu County, where I lead environmental activities, awareness campaigns, and youth-led cleanup actions. As part of CREEN, I work with other young advisors to ensure that children's voices are not only collected, but heard, respected, and acted upon. From my work, I have learned something very important. Young people don't lack ideas. We lack resources, we lack platforms, and we lack adults who believe in us enough to give us a seat at the table. If we truly want a meaningful, just transition, the children and youth must be recognized, not as beneficiaries, but as partners. Partners in environmental governance, partners in policy departments, and partners in community solutions. Children are given too few platforms to express themselves in environmental spaces where we are part of the solution. We need education for sustainable development integrated into every school, not as a privilege, but as a global right. When children learn about climate literacy, environmental literacy, and environmental responsibility, they grow into adults who lead sustainable solutions. We need decision makers to ensure that environmental laws and climate commitments protect the most vulnerable, especially the children. But above all, we need to stop talking about children and start talking with children. We are ready, we are engaged, and we are already leading change in our communities. What we ask for today is simple but powerful. Let our voices guide the solutions that shape our future. Excellencies, the Declaration on Future Generations reminds us that we have a responsibility, not only to today's children, but those who will come long after us. Every action you take, every policy you pass, writes a sentence in the story of a child who is not yet born. Let that story be one of hope and not harm. Let it be a story where children can inherit clean rivers instead of polluted ones, healthy forests instead of dying ones, and opportunities instead of obstacles. Because the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is not just a promise written in the UN resolutions. It is a promise that must be felt in the water we drink, the air we breathe, and the world we grow up in. As a 15-year-old girl from Kisumu, standing in this global space, I believe in a future where environmental justice and climate action works hand in hand, and I believe together governments, youth, civil society, and the UN, we can make this transition truly just, inclusive, and transformative for all generations. Thank you. Asanteni sana.
Shirley, it is your moment to address all three of the panelists and ask them the questions you have prepared.
Okay, so the first question goes to Your Excellency. How can the UNEP and UNEA create more meaningful opportunities for children to actively participate in environmental decision-making, not just as a voice, but as partners?
So thank you. I think we have certainly tried very much to include the voices of young people and children, and I'm very proud that you are here.
Thank
I
you.
mean, this young woman, can we just, this is something else. And she gives voice to an activism that is vibrant and one that has enriched UNEP in many, many ways. And we obviously want more than voices. We want actors, which is why, for example, in much of our research, for example, we released the Global Environmental Outlook yesterday. It's not exactly children, but nevertheless, we funded fellows who were part, and they're still in their graduate studies, but they're scientists about to finish their studies, and they were part and parcel of this work. That's very critical, and the more we can include in the IPCC, in the IPBES, in the chemicals framework, young budding scientists, this is probably their first exposure to deep public research in this way, but honestly, it will open up doors for them in many ways. We encourage any donor that would wish to support this effort to kindly look at that, because it is something that enables the roadmap. For children, often, of course, we in the United Nations, we do not have a dedicated program other than our very good friends at UNICEF, which are directly working on children, as you well know. And I'm pleased to say that the UNICEF colleagues are stepping up significantly on their environmental program in the context of children and youth. And that is important. They've increased their skills, and we have supported them on the climate side so that they can work in this space more effectively. And so we open our doors to youth. We do have rules in the UN made by people who are adults and member states, I have to say, that young people have to be chaperoned, that they cannot be on their own. That's about legal responsibility, and you will understand. But, and so therefore, we cannot have unchaperoned underage children, but we are very proud to see so many young voices amongst us, and we hope that the Children and Youth Major Group that Clive is a co-chair of will continue to involve those voices in every way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your answer, and thank you for all the great work you've been doing supporting us children. We really appreciate. The next question to Your Excellency, the Minister. How will you ensure that today's side event is not just a one-off event, but is a start for continuing the dialogue with the children and youth, which will inform your decisions on the just transition?
Thank you very much, Shirley, for your question. And before I start answering, I have to congratulate you for your intervention. There were so many key messages in your intervention, and I hope that this will be just a base to work and not only start from now on. If we are looking ahead, I think that the most important step, at least for me or for us, is to create opportunities, spaces where youth and children can speak, can lead, can also be very actively involved in decision-making process, and at the same time they could shape decisions. That is very important. That is not only one event, one meeting, but that there is a process that will continue. I'm pleased that I can announce that Slovenia will apply to host a site event next year in April with children and youth at the Regional Forum for Sustainable Development in Geneva. That could be and will be, I hope, another opportunity. And between April next year and today, there is a lot of also opportunities to make progress. And we will see where will we be in a couple of months. I also would like to use this opportunity today to continue the dialogue, not only between children and youth, but also between decision-making people, policy makers, to carry out some benefits for all of us. And I hope that this will continue not only for us and our partners and friends, but also to extend all the way to UNEA 8 and beyond.
Thank you so much for your great answer. The last question goes to Marcos. How can children and youth use your mandate to better protect the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment?
Thank you, Shirley. And I wish to also echo the congratulations for your work, also for the work of the delegation that's with you, that Corinne, as one of the co-hosts of this event, and the major group on children and youth. And that's because in the negotiations that are happening over there, so that we can be here, they can often be described as a constellation of abstractions written in a language that is inaccessible to most people around the world. And you make it possible for the key messages to reach audiences that the United Nations, with its mechanisms and its mandates, often does not reach. And so it's a critical role, and I want to congratulate and celebrate that. Now, on to your question. Over the course of my tenure in the mandate, in Toxics and Human Rights mandate, it's been 5 years and counting, there have been multiple instances of engagement with children. I want to even look further back. My predecessor devoted a thematic report to the issue of children and toxics. This was done in collaboration with the movement of children around the world, and it helped that movement push the needle with the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child in interpreting the Convention on the Rights of the Child in recognizing the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. During the course of my mandate, I've continued that advocacy, leading to that result. I've also had the benefit of engaging children in the presentation of thematic reports to the UN Human Rights Council. Madam ED, you spoke about the substantive dimension of the right to a healthy environment, the right to live in a non-toxic environment. I prepared a thematic report focused on that, and in presenting it, brought in voices from children from, for example, Kabwe in Zambia, one of the most heavily polluted sites around the world with lead. It's just an example of, there are several others. And since time is tight, I do want to point to one other tool that the mandate exercises, which are communications. So communications to states, to companies, to other actors, in situations and cases involving human rights infringements and violations. Children have presented information about cases involving these violations, and the framing has allowed them to put a spotlight on, again, not the abstract dimensions of the legal obligations, but their implications for the real experience, the lived experience of children in a specific setting, in a specific community. There are a number of cases I could speak about that around the world, so that engagement, I think, is very useful, is very important for the effectiveness of the Toxics and Human Rights mandate as a special procedure of the Human Rights Council. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your great answers, and once again, thank you for all you're doing, supporting children and our generation and our future.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, esteemed panel, for your time, wisdom, and commitment. Much appreciation to Her Excellency once more, Ingrid Anderson, His Excellency Boyan Kumer, Dr. Marcos Aureliana, and our shining star, Shirley. We will now transition to our next dialogue. If I may kindly invite our spotlight dialogue speakers to take their seats in the front row. We will now be continuing with our next panel. The thematic dialogue's theme is advancing the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment through a just transition. I would like to invite our second panel to take their seats at the stage. His Excellency Alejandro Solano, Vice Minister for Multilateral Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Worship in Costa Rica. His Excellency Mohammed Faiz, Minister of State for Tourism and Environment from the Maldives. Yes, please, anywhere. Ms. Camila Zepeda Leizama, Head of the Coordination Unit, Ministry of Environment from Mexico. Mr. Gubin Huang, Head of Partnerships, Children and Youth Major Group. Last but not the least, Mr. Andres del Castillo, Senior Attorney, Environmental Health Program, Center for International Environmental Law. In this segment, we want to highlight how different countries, contexts, and institutions are integrating rights-based approaches, and importantly, how children and youth are meaningfully participating in decision-making processes. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to respond to our guiding question. I will state it now. From your perspective and experience, how are you advising the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment through a just transition? And are there any examples from your national or international context that highlight meaningful participation of children and youth in environmental decision-making? I would first like to invite His Excellency Alejandro Solano to take the first question.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you to organizers once again for convening this kind of space to debate this particular issue. And let me start saying that from Costa Rica's point of view, the human rights agenda linkage to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment are interconnected, really. In our case, the decarbonization and resilience are central to transforming our development model in one that be equitable, inclusive, and prosperous for trying to accomplish that no one behind. Over the years, my country has strengthened its legal and institutional framework for climate action following the Paris Agreement, ensuring that climate strategies generate social benefits for all, such as green jobs, ecosystem restoration, poverty reduction. At the same time, we try to take care of the potential negative impacts that used to take some kind of political decisions and social and economical decisions in these sectors. At the same time, we recognize that this process may affect some productive sectors and labor markets, making it essential that the transformation is just, inclusive, and for all. The decarbonization is not just merely an environmental goal or an economical structure. It's an historic opportunity to transform our development model into benefits for the entire population. Our approach emphasizes inclusion, human rights, and gender equality, supported through international cooperation and multi-stakeholder initiatives. Notably, we promote territorial and decarbonized productive clusters that bring together businesses, universities, public institutions, civil society to foster collaborative, sustainable development and full compromise. And let me say to finish that one of the key issues is the ownership for the local communities and the particular groups. For instance, indigenous communities, Afro-descendant populations are very important one in this process. At the same time, the role that the women and the youth can play in this field. Listen, the first panel, I remember that one of the key issues is how the students, for instance, in small communities, take ownership of this process of commitment, and in certain manner, they are the key actors in this process through very concrete actions, and imply that the policymakers are to take into consideration these voices. Otherwise, there is no full commitment of for this decision in the process.
Thanks, Your Excellency. Next would be His Excellency Mohammed Faiz.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Advancing the universal right to clean, healthy, and sustainable environment has long been central to the Maldives' foreign policy and our national priorities. The Maldives has been proud to champion Human Rights Council Resolution 4813 and General Assembly Resolution 76-300, helping secure global recognition that every person in every corner of the world has this fundamental right. This resolution embeds the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment within the global human rights agenda and reinforce its place in the broader 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. As Dr. Marcos has mentioned, we are also pleased to note that International Court of Justice advisory opinion on the obligation of states in respect of climate change, delivered on 23rd July 2025, in which the court granted unprecedented recognition that the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is a precondition, inherent, and essential for the enjoyment of all other human rights. The creation of the special rapporteur on the right to a clean, healthy, sustainable environment has further been instrumental in clarifying the scope of this right, identifying the implementation gaps, and supporting the states. The Maldives was honored to host Dr. David Boyd during his 2024 country visit in his capacity as the special rapporteur. For small island development states such as Maldives, the greatest barrier to implementing this right is not political will. It is mostly its capacity and the financial space. At the national level, our efforts are focused on strengthening environmental governance and enhancing access to climate finance to support adaptation, resilience, and equitable climate action. Advancing this right also requires reinforcing its procedural pillars: access to information, public participation, and environmental literacy, especially for children and young people, who are among the most affected and most engaged. Feedback from children and young people have been directly integrated into our nationally determined contributions, NDC 3, ensuring that our climate commitments reflect youth perspectives and their priorities. Through partnerships with organizations including UNICEF, initiatives such as the Climate Guardians provide youth with structured platform to build skills, advocate for climate justice, and contribute meaningfully to the national climate policy, turning awareness into tangible actions. Looking ahead, the Maldives will continue to mainstream the principle of the right access all sectors of governance, ensuring that environmental considerations inform our policies, planning, and development pathways. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Next, we have Ms. Camila Zepeda Lizama. Go ahead, Madam.
Thank you very much. And you already heard in the first panel how in the multilateral agenda we have been advancing human rights. But it hasn't been a straight line. It seems like we take one step and then 2 steps backwards. And it's one battle after another. Even if we have recognition, it seems like it doesn't stick. So how do we make it stick? And that's by showcasing best practices and by us countries actually delivering on how to implement the human rights, and particularly now with the just transition and with children and youth. And so in the case of Mexico, I'm actually very proud to say that we did that for our new national determined contribution. While we were updating it, we decided to have very extensive consultations with different groups. We had a specific consultation on just transition with the International Organization of Migration. We also partnered with UNICEF to have a specific consultation for the first time, not just with youth, but also with children. And we had 18 of theirs on gender, on so many issues. But all of those were translated into our NDC. So they're actually reflected now in our commitments. And not only did we strengthen our commitments in terms of mitigation and adaptation action, but also on transversal issues. So we have a component on just transition this time around. And we're developing a national plan, and we're gathering information because we know just transition looks different across sectors. And we're also bringing a specific component of intergenerational equity and, of course, gender perspective. And in those, we're trying to empower with children and youth to be at the table where we make those decisions. And so one specific example, and that I'm also very proud of because I personally created 5 years ago a program tailored to youth to be able to train them for the whole year and then take part of COP negotiations. And actually, some of those youth led the position of Mexico in just transition. So it's by acting on that, by showing that we bring them as actors in the negotiations, that they can make changes, that they can be there, and that they're very well capable to defend their own principles. So we hope that there's more countries coming up with good example and best practices, and that way that we can move forward this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that example, Ms. Camilla. Next is Mr. Gubin Huang.
Thank you for that. So before I start, I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of what CYMG, the Children and Youth Major Group, is. I think it's easy to understand what a country is, what a government is, but CYMG can be quite nebulous, even for those who are engaging with us. We are one of the 9 major groups mandated to work with the UNEP and UNEP in ensuring the voices of young people in all of its matters. And over the past 2 years, we've built a very, very strong mechanism, a network, a self-organized group of young people who come to UNEP every single day, as Clive does, and speaking to member states, to UNEP colleagues, to advance our voices in the work of the entire UNEP Secretariat. And we are very grateful to the support of many member states and the UNEP Secretariat in this endeavor. So I'm going to pick up, I think, on 3 key ideas from the question that was posed here. The first is about the right to a healthy environment, clean, healthy, sustainable environment, and the second is about just transition, and the third about how CYMG, the major group, works on these matters. On the first, on the right to a healthy environment, I think the key thing that we are working with here is intergenerational equity. As the colleague from Mexico mentioned, international law follows a bit of a tick-tock cycle or a boom and bust cycle. And perhaps at the last UNEA, we made a bit of a step forward. And this UNEA, we're not going 2 steps back, but we are perhaps defending the gains that we have made previously in terms of the agreed on language that we have negotiated over the past 5 decades. This starts, of course, with the Stockholm Declaration of 1972. We have the Rio Declaration, Principle 3 in 1992. And more recently, we have the Paris Agreement in 2015 and the Declaration on Future Generations agreed just last year at UNGA that really enshrined the idea of intergenerational equity, moving from a fairly fluffy concept to something that is in these documents as a principle that guides how we integrate and operationalize the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. So, the intergenerational equity is the principle by which we operationalize this, and as CYMG, we are really committed to making sure that we advance this in all of our efforts. The second idea about the just transition, as CYMG, we think about just transition as being core to our economic future. These two are intertwined and they go hand in hand in all scenarios. This means that we care deeply about education, the competencies for sustainable development, and the jobs that result from these, the decent green jobs. And to this extent, we have been advocating very, very strongly for these ideas to be part of the youth resolution that is being negotiated, and I think fairly successfully, in the halls just behind you over there. And the third point about how we do this in the Children and Youth Ministry. Over the weekend before OECPR, so on the 29th and 30th of November, we held the 3rd Youth Environment Assembly in these halls, in the halls of Yunnan. We hosted more than 1,200 people for the Youth Assembly, and I think that's a growth of about 300% from last year in 2024. And this is the primary mechanism by which we ensure intergenerational equity, where we bring together young people to give them capacity enhancement by and for young people. And we bring member states, senior leaders on the stage to tell them what young people want from them. So this is really enshrining the idea of the intergenerational dialogue that is enshrined in the Declaration of Future Generations, and we are working very, very hard to defend this space for young people, by young people, and making sure that it's inclusive for all. And on the final point about inclusion, we have talked, the executive director has spoken about it, Shirley has spoken about it, our colleagues at CRIN are also very, very invested in this, the idea of the space for children. And as CYMG, we take a very, very nuanced view, and we want to make sure we have a safe and inclusive space for those who are under 18 or not yet of legal age, while ensuring that they have the support, the capacity to engage as they grow older in the very complex and sometimes not the safest environment. And to this effect, CYMG, we have supported the participation of Shirley and of Francisco, another under 18 delegate. Say hi, Francisco. And we are making sure that we are going to collaborate with CRIN going forward to make sure that our Children's Affairs Working Group in CYMG, it's one of 13 working groups, has set up a really strong space for young people to learn, to teach each other, and to have a strong voice in a safe and structured environment. So to that extent, I really invite all of you to speak to Children and Youth Major Group delegates. So Clive, of course, our global co-coordinator, say hi, and many other delegates in the crowd here. Speak to us. We're happy to hear from you, learn from you. We're also happy to share our experiences, best practices of how we engage children and youth in these discussions. Thanks, Sonny.
So much, Cuban. Next, we have Mr. Andrés del Castillo.
Hello, everybody. I'm putting my hat to not be confused with Marcos and to internalize my Peter Pan spirit, that I think that if we have the energy and the potential ideas of the youth, we will be in a safari and not in a room negotiating inside words that I don't know what is the effect of those words at this point, but some of those are important. And I want to highlight how CL works, but mainly not only with the stakeholders, with right holders, by saying first that, making an announcement here, that the Tirar Más Fotos, I should have taken more pictures, is the most streamed album of 2025 in the world, and that goes with the line that we need to resonate today. I hope I did something that I haven't, right? And this is the main question. And I'm very proud to be here close to you, the decision makers, that you will ask yourself today and after and in many years, what I have done different at the time. Did I have the courage to do it or not? Because this is the time that we are doing, as the previous panelists just said, we are holding the lines here. And sometimes this is what we try to do. This is more rhetoric, but there are many people in the world holding the line, being the fence line and frontline communities that are sacrificing their lives. So I will pay a tribute to those people who are absent and who are not here, right? The second is like, as stakeholders, we always like to have the microphone, which is nice, but some of the right holders, especially indigenous peoples, deserve not only to have the voice, the microphone, but also to hold the pen and to write for us and with us the future that they see for us. So by saying this, usually we define politics and diplomacy as the art of what is possible, right? But we cannot limit ourselves to this idea of what is possible, but what is fundamental. And human rights are fundamental. You already say that the right to a health, clean and sustainable environment is a fundamental right. You have the International Court of Justice that is this year past the test of time in the moment where wings are not going in the direction that we want, right? This gives the perennity, the perpetuity at this international court as an institution to show the independence and to show the courage that we want and that people are saying. And it's important to mention that that International Court Justice Advisory Opinion comes from a constituency that today we are talking youth, but children too. And I want to emphasize both because in the negotiations of what we are trying to do this week here, one specific resolution on children and youth, we're negotiating whether we put children or not, and they take out. That was a compromise, to take out the word children. And I think that there is something that we need to fix is the moral compass at this point. It's not anymore about economic interest. It's about the moral compass, and I know by being here for many years that some of you and many of you have been working with, you are the one that represent us, and we are very proud to work with you in what is coming. So now, on something more concrete that I want to mention here on how we work, I will mention how in the plastics treaty negotiations, some constituencies have been working to make sure that their voice are heard. And there are two concrete examples. The Youth Plastic Action Network, which is amazing. They what they do is they are not a major group because there is no major group system in the plastic trade negotiations. I think that the major group is important, but it's not a share that fits everybody. And in the dynamics of the plastic trade negotiations, there are other actors that are very important. For instance, waste speakers, that they organize themselves also through the International Alliance of Waste Speakers. And finally, one of the constituencies, indigenous peoples, they also have the International Indigenous People Forum for Plastic. This is a way how you concretize what you need, which is direct diplomacy. Because, and here I will reveal my age, as Michael Jackson say, in one of the songs, eles não ligam pra gente. They don't care about us, right? It's one of the feelings that we have sometimes in this room. Not with you, you are a deception. But because of that, we need to be organized, and because of that, there are people that want to be organized. But here, my last point for UNEP specifically, there are in African descendants, and we are celebrating this second decade of African descendants, that they feel that they don't fit in any of those major groups of today. And they are calling for the decision makers to raise the voice and say, yes, African descendants, good for music, yes, Lenny Kravitz, yes, for sports, awesome. But when it comes to policies and rights, absence, because they need this kind of support. So this is my call now. Thank you.
Many, many thanks for the panel's insights. At this juncture, I would like to present the esteemed Mr. Rashid Firadi, Director of Cooperation, Partnership and Communication, Ministry of Energy Transition and Sustainable Development, and UNEP National Focal Point from Morocco. Mr. Rashid, please take the podium, and it's yours for your remarks.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank our partners for convening this timely event. As we reflect on how to advance human environmental rights, we are reminded that it is not only a legal principle, but a promise owed to present and future generations. For Morocco, this right can only be fulfilled when people are placed at the center of climate and development policies. This is rooted in our constitution and new development model, and guided by the vision of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, may God assist him, who has made sustainable development and environmental protection as national priorities. The Kingdom of Morocco was proud to join the core group that secured the first global recognition of these rights through Human Rights Council and UNGA's resolutions. These milestones remind us that environmental protection and human rights work hand in hand. In translating this commitment into actions, Morocco raised its climate ambition. Our NDC 3.0 targets a 53% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. It is already aligned with Paris Agreement. And our energy transitions aims for 52 renewable electricity capacity by 2030, of which 46% is already achieved. Yet, a just transition is not only about emission reductions. It requires resilience. That's why adaptation is central. our national strategy for sustainable development and national strategic adaptation plan integrate adaptation across all sectors, ensuring socio-economic development is aligned with environmental protection. For my country, the right to a healthy environment is not an abstract ambition. It is a human rights imperative that must be translated into laws, institutions, education, access to information, and meaningful participation. In this regard, we have taken concrete steps by adopting robust environmental laws and putting in place strong institutional mechanisms, including the 2 national commissions on sustainable development and climate and biodiversity. We have also mainstreamed environmental education in school curricula and created youth-led eco-clubs. Furthermore, the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection plays a central role through its eco-schools and young environmental reporters programs, which cultivate leadership, build green skills, and enable thousands of young Moroccans and Africans to meaningfully participate in climate processes. Morocco will continue strengthening youth engagement, expanding green skills ecosystems, and deepening regional cooperation, focusing on youth empowerment, resilient livelihoods, and environmental justice. Morocco remains ready to work with its partners to advance these universal rights and ensure that young people are engaged as leaders of the just transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And it's now my pleasure to open the floor for a question and answer session. I hope you got to think about your questions during this time. Audience members may ask any questions to both the Spotlight Dialogue panelists, who are now seated at the front seat, and the Thematic Dialogue panelists, who are seated on the stage. And this session will be kick-started by one of our own. It's a very special person, Mariam from Egypt, one of our youngest and one of the brightest delegates, who has prepared something. May I please call on Mariam? She's coming. She just went on juice break. Yeah, she was already there like 30 minutes ago. Hi, Mariam.
Hello everyone, my name is Mariam and I am 9 years old. I came here all the way from Egypt to attend UNEP 7. I have been listening to all of you talk about the future of our environment, but I have a question. What will my future look like? Will I still breathe clean air? Will I still drink clean water? Will I still see the animals you see today? The fish in the oceans and the birds in the sky? All I am asking is that you think about children like me, children everywhere in the world who are worried about what is coming. Some children live in places affected by conflict. They don't always have food or clean water or a safe home. They are the ones who suffer the most when the environment is damaged. And I also want to remind everyone that older people worry about us too. They want to protect us, and we want to learn from them. Together, children, adults, and older persons, we can all take care of our planet. Please, when you make decisions here at UNEP 7, remember the children of today and the older people who have carried wisdom for many years. We all need a safe, healthy, sustainable, and hopeful future. Thank you.
A powerful statement from Mariam. May we please have a reaction, at least from one of our panelists who would like to take this one?
But where did she go?
She's just there.
Hi. You are very brave. And we're very happy that you are speaking up to us and that we need your example to show us the way, because we definitely want to ensure that you can see all the nature in its best. And I hope you get to see it here and you're going to go. You saw already. So hopefully also for the next generations, they can experience the same. And we hope that this gives you an opportunity to keep fighting for that on your next years to come, and that you have a career on defending the environment. But we're taking duly note. Thank you.
We have Madame Angelica.
Yes. My name is Angela Tenbrook, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Sustainable Agricultural Excellence and Conservation. Today, I have one responsibility: to ensure farmers, and especially smallholders, are not left out of this environmental strategy. I want to make a point first on how farmers, many of them are youth and children, women and girl children specifically. We must address how water scarcity is a food security crisis. Integrated aquaculture and agriculture systems can eliminate and help climate stabilize. Eliminating agricultural runoff to protect shared water and building wealth through local production. How can we empower and fund these initiatives to put food where food is needed most? Using both indigenous and future technologies to small farm holders in youth environments such as schools, in their community centers, and in their villages all over the world. There are many small farm holders who are youth and children. How are we going to fund them going forward?
Thank you for that question. Who would like to take this one?
So yes, we do see that nature-based solutions are a very good example on how we can integrate them. In Mexico, we also have a lot of small farms, and the scale for projects on mitigation doesn't reach ever to small farmers. And so we're aiming at the funds that go for adaptation, and then that we can tailor it, particularly on payment to ecosystem services. That is a way that we see that we can integrate agro-silvopastoral schemes. And so we're looking into different ecosystems, because that's also is a challenge. You need to be tailored to the specific geographic location of those small farmers. The challenges they face are not the same across the different regions, and even in our country, northern farmers are completely different than southern farmers, and even the crops and everything. So one thing that we have learned is that we have to talk to the specific communities, and then to make sure that we are finding solutions to finance, because that is, at the rock bottom, there's the need for money to make sure that we can then make that just transition for them. So it's a lot of local work, and we are very thankful for NGOs that actually help us bridge and reach out to them and make sure that they're part of the solution. But we're looking a lot into nature-based solutions.
Thank you, Madame Camilla. Dr. Aureliano would like to say something.
Thank you, Ori. Thank you for the question. I want to echo one point that you've made in the question, which is that it is a sheer number of children that work in the fields, especially in the global south, and they are routinely and deliberately exposed to highly hazardous pesticides, many of which are banned in their countries of origin. This is a blatant double standard that needs to come to an end. In dealing with hazardous pesticides, a global partnership needs to be given effect. And that starts with producing nations that have banned these substances because they're hazardous for human health in their territories, but allow them for production for export, as if the lives of children in the global south were of less merit and value than the lives of people in the global north. But it's not only exporting countries, it's also importing countries of these pesticides that have duties with respect to people under their jurisdiction, so children, again, in the fields. So, thank you for your question.
Thank you, Doctor. Any other responses?
Thank you. Agriculture is not my field, but in the Maldives we are all small farmers, because islands are small, the scale of agriculture is small, and therefore we have launched a program to create agriculture entrepreneurs, to help the young people to come into agriculture and be part of the food production. And as most of you may know, Maldives is a 90% import-dependent country. Most of our food is also imported from everywhere, from South Africa, even from Brazil. We have started this new initiative, and we are also having the same question on how to channel funds to the new and young entrepreneurs who want to start into agriculture and other things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions from the audience members? Oh, yes, the gentleman at the back first, and you will be next. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm Ben Schachter. I'm with the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And I wanted to ask about this idea of transition. We often hear discussions about new technologies and innovation and businesses and the role that they can play in helping us transition. But I don't hear very much about the role that they can potentially play in perpetuating the current status quo and perpetuating inequalities and leading to and increasing risks to the environment. And so when we talk about and think about transition and technology and innovation, from a human rights perspective, we have to be thinking about risks as well as opportunities. And I just want to ask, do you think enough thought is going into the risks, into the changes that we need to make in regulatory systems, into the ways that we have to approach new technologies? And if not, what are you planning to do about it? Thank you.
Well, let me tell you that last Council on Human Rights, I had the opportunity to participate in one debate about the artificial intelligence and the human rights. One of the topics we're discussing in that time were how the technology is affecting the human rights. And you are talking about that, how this transition on new technology could affect the human rights. Well, it depends on how the technology is used and promoted by states. It's clear that artificial intelligence is coming for good and for bad. We need to be very careful on how we should implement these new technologies. In certain cases, technology comes to help people. In many others, come probably to affect people. I'm talking about, for instance, the data protection, or how some cases the technology could affect other particular area of their private life. So I think in the case of the environment and agriculture, for instance, the technology should be implemented to help people and to promote additional opportunities to improve life quality. But of course, as policymakers, we also need to be careful about the impact that this technology could have in terms of perpetuates this possibility. Of course, the idea is that the countries need to improve. The agriculture is essential in small economies. For instance, in our case, as Maldives say, in our case, Costa Rica is also an agricultural country, but it's becoming every day more a scientific country. We have one of the largest hubs in medical care devices. So this is one of the issues that through technology we need to provide new opportunities for the young population if they want to make the change, but at the same time taking care that agriculture should be remain part of essential of our economical social system.
Thanks. And to complement, I will give you some examples of what has been under negotiations during the last couple of weeks, and includes issues on critical minerals that now we are not going to go how it's going to end it, and if that resolution is going to survive. Artificial intelligence was also a topic that that had the intention to be addressed. However, the human rights-based approach is very important to look not only at techno-fixed solutions that usually are unicorns in that trying to capture CO2 from the atmosphere, or I don't know, turn off the sun, or solar engineering, for instance, is a threat for future generations that we are talking now. There are other techno-fix, for instance, the plastics space, chemical recycling is also seen as the silver bullet that will solve all the problems, and we have seen that all in the different spheres on the environmental law. So that is the reason why human rights is very important. And on the case of indigenous peoples, there's always this call for traditional knowledge and traditional knowledge system and indigenous people's knowledge, but without the safeguards that they need, that are promoted through a human rights lens. That is just an extractivist approach that needs to be stopped. Thank you.
If none, we will go with the lady at the front.
Thank you very much. My name is Carmen Marquez, and I'm a European Climate Pact ambassador. And my question is about the impact of the recognition of this right to a healthy environment on climate litigation, because this year the cases have increased, and they have reached more than 3,000 ongoing cases. So how the recognition of the right to a healthy environment is going to impact climate litigation? And there have been also cases where young people have started this climate litigation. I would be interested in knowing the views of the panel.
Thank you very much. A very good question. I can say Maldives is blessed with a beautiful and clean environment. Let me say, was blessed. Today, I've received reports that we have got haze from due to burnings in a neighboring country, that we are facing the issue, the cross-border issue. So even though we have our children are used to a clean air breathing, and today they are having to breathe this haze, and this creates additional problems. So you're right. In a climate change environment, there are two issues. One is natural calamities. The other is man-made, like the ones that we are facing now. So I think it is important that we take measures into play to make sure that climate change adaptations are met in order to have a cleaner environment for the people and for the children. For us, it's a very good example. Today it happened, so you brought up the question. I had the opportunity to say this. Thank you.
So I think you might know of the State of Climate Litigation report that was released by UNEP, I think maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And this is a fairly exhaustive report that works with Columbia Center for Environmental Law on look at the state of things. And I think in an ideal world, we would see a very linear progression from the right to a healthy environment to increase in climate litigation against not just states, but also polluters and individuals, and also, by extension, a broader recognition of the idea of crimes that affect the environment. But as we are seeing from the ongoing negotiations, the draft resolution on crimes that affect the environment is on life support, if that. It's basically dead. And there's a lot of member states who are pushing back very, very hard on the idea of accountability, about crimes, or about the ability of legislative systems, or indeed in the multilateral space, to govern these frameworks. And I think as a result of this current geopolitical environment, we have a lot of challenges, and I think the UNEP report lays it out quite clearly. One of these, of course, is the protection of the environmental human rights defenders and the fears of reprisal that are quite common in many countries. And I think as a result of this, there might not be a very, very obvious increase in litigation across the board. But I'll defer to the legal experts on that.
So from the Center for International Environmental Law, we have been following different cases. In some of the international, we have been contributed through amicus curiae. And when it comes to your question on national litigation, of course, this not only the recognition to the right to health environment is important, because at the national level, many of the jurisdictions already, they recognize that. But was mostly the recent advisory opinions from the ICLOS, the Inter-American Court of Justice, and the International Court of Justice too, that are clarifying how those wrongful acts from countries, for instance, new exploitation or exploration permit for fossil fuels can be seen through the lens of a wrongful act. And that is something that was not clear before. So in future, we will see more of this kind of litigation. Thank you.
Very much, and I'd like to go to Madame Rachel.
Anglican Church Environmental Network. My question is regarding the right to clean air. So if plastic is being burned in a community where there's not good waste and releasing toxic fumes, could you use the extended producer responsibility in order to either sue the plastic producer or the local municipality for the toxic impact of that burning of the plastic?
Yes, you can. And not only that, I'm also very proud right now because a few hours ago, with Mexico, published our new general law on circular economy. And we are included the extended producer responsibility. So we got a lot of pushback from the business sector, but after very intensive consultations and still pushing back, we got it within our general law. So we are making accountable all plastic producers, and for that matter, all producers in general, because there's waste, not just from plastics, to make sure that they are seeing the whole value chain of their product and then being responsible for it. So it's not easy, but it needs to be regulated, so yes.
Thank you. Yes, I think we in the Maldives, we have environmental regulatory authority, which is given so much power by a legislative environment, whereby we have created the ERA, the Environment Regulatory Authority, is able to fine the producers, even the users, and anybody who is responsible for that. And they are being given the authority to investigate with the help of government support and other authorities supporting them. And this enables us to ensure that our environment is maintained as clean as much possible for our people and our future.
Thank you, Ori. And I would like to add a point about extended producer responsibilities across borders, because as Camila has mentioned, in the implementation of the polluter pays principle, the concept of EPR for the acronym has been used to help support waste management systems by collecting a levy from plastic manufacturers or importers. There's a whole movement that has denounced toxic colonialism or plastic colonialism in the export of plastic waste that then gets dumped and burned. And that is where the responsibility of the plastic producer, that is not in the country where the plastic is burned, but is in the country of origin of the plastic waste that is exported. What is the responsibility of that entity? And here we see a blind spot on EPR systems at the national level, and thereby the need of an EPR effective system across boundaries to give effect precisely what you're talking about. Thank you.
And we do have time for one last question, if there are any left. Yes, the lady at the back. One final question.
Hi, thank you very much, everyone. My name is Bethany. I'm a professor of ecotoxicology and environmental sciences in Sweden. And I'm wondering if the panel could reflect, maybe a little bit connected to Ben's question earlier, on how science can be used to strengthen these rights, both for the clean, healthy environment, but also for children, and how science can be protected in helping us find sustainable and safer solutions going forward.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And I mean, I've been following the science policy interface in the UNEP context quite closely for the past few years. We were here at UNEA 5.2 trying to ensure that the youth fellowship that Inga spoke about was maintained for GEO7, which launched yesterday. But then what you probably also know is that in October, we had negotiations of the GEO7 summary for policymakers, which failed. So now we have a 1,200-page report that has no summary for policymakers. And so I think increasingly in negotiations, you're seeing a major pushback on language around the word science, climate science, or any sort of reference to scientific publications by UNEP or any other body that prohibits recognition of basic facts in these discussions. And so I think when we think about resolutions like strengthening the role of Nairobi in Cluster D proposed by Mexico, or resolution on MEA synergies proposed by Panama and Japan, there has to be a really strong consideration of how the science policy interface has to be integrated into these discussions, and I think, you know, with all due respect to UNEP colleagues, I think there is avenue for improvement in that regard. And I think we all talk about the IPCC's 7-year report cycles, which do very little good to anybody negotiating at UNFCCC COPs. And from the point of view of children and youth, there is a huge gap as well in terms of getting this across to young people. And so the children and youth category, it's a very broad category, first of all. We think about youth as being 18 to 35. Many of us, I think most of us, are fairly science literate, but then a lot of our children colleagues, those under the age of 18, those in school, they don't necessarily want to engage with a 1,200-page report. I mean, I don't either, for that matter. And so I think for GEO6, there was funding available to have a GEO6 for youth report, but not at this GEO. And I think that was a huge missed opportunity to bridge the gap between science and younger colleagues to make sure that we are able to take this knowledge and bring it to the negotiation table. And I think that's one way that the Children and Youth Major Group are working really hard to make it more accessible, to be a foundational component of our advocacy.
Thanks. I consider that the best way to protect science is making sure that you differentiate between science and science. It sounds repetitive, but it's not. And in environmental science, you see how, at least on the chemical sector, there's a lot of science produced by their own industry that is trying to be regulated, and there are different techniques that has been used for many years, and the playbook comes back from the tobacco industry lobby. But the first thing is to protect science, is to protect the spaces from lobby which will harm or try to disinform what is happening inside of the rooms. And this kind of protections come with policies on conflict of interest. That is something that everybody knows but nobody talks about. And this is an important topic to address. And again, the human rights lens offers different possibilities, and the UN human rights mechanism has been also a tool that scientists have been using to protect this right to science. Thank you.
Been fantastic. Colleagues, we have reached the end of our side event. I would like to thank all our speakers, panelists, all our delegates, from the youngest to the young and hard, for participating in our agenda to advance environmental human rights. We can never speak about policy and rule of law without including young people and the generations that are yet to come. Our rights are theirs to inherit, and if there is a way for them to grow up or to come into this world better than how we found it, then that would be our collective dream, wouldn't it be? I said this during the Youth Environment Assembly closing session, and I will say it again now. The prize for saving the world is the chance for the future generation to live in it. Once again, happy International Human Rights Day. I'm Ani from CYMG. It's been the time of my life to be here with Changemakers. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.